Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the wrap up with myself, Jamie Talks. It's been a little while, guys. But yeah, I am back 9 p.m. on a Wednesday to wrap up some of the week's news and some of the upcoming week's news, of course. Wow, let's talk about the weekend first and foremost. But I'll wait for a few of you to actually get in here for sure. See a few of you are actually leaving some comments already. Some regular faces. Good to have you in here. Thank you very much. I am glad you're excited. That is my girlfriend for anyone who needs to know. She's being my number one fan. Anyway, Randy, good to have you in here, mate. All right, Jamie, I hope you're well. It was a nice win. Feels like since Leicester at home for the last win, but after Forest and Ipswich with positive results and finally starting with this monumental window. It's going to be a big, big window, isn't it? Jamie, you got any thoughts on the possible rumour about Trip Smith wanting to buy David Gold's 25.1% shares at West Ham? I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. Obviously, David Sullivan leading the club at the moment. Obviously, we have Kuczynski, his investment, and then obviously any potential investment from America could then obviously see maybe a slightly different direction for the club. I think it's a poison chalice, really, isn't it? There's lots of American owners coming into the English game, especially over the last decade or not, or also I should say. And there's lots of case studies for it working and case studies for it not working as well as it could have done. So for me, I'd be optimistic. I don't really know enough about Trip Smith, to be honest with you. Do we have any information? Let me do a quick Google about who Trip Smith are. Who else do they even own? But interesting to say the least. Who do they own? Yeah, American billionaire Albert Trip Smith has bought 10%. I know he's been involved in the club in the past, apparently. So there we go. Anyway, for me personally, I'd be optimistic about ownership of the football club. I think the one thing for West Ham at the moment, I always tend to steer clear of talking about the board because there's so many things that we're not privy to as fans. Obviously, what I like to talk about is like performances on the pitch and whatnot, and team selections and players performing to the level that we would expect and whatnot. Whereas, like, you know, things at board level, it's hard for me to like sit here and give an articulated opinion on it because I don't know all the available information. You know, I just know that certain things happen and we don't always know the reasons as to why, and I'm not one to really speculate on those kind of things. So for me personally, I'd be open and optimistic to, you know, talks about the board. And I think for the vast majority of the fan base, they are obviously, there's been dissent towards the board for many, many years. The whole GSB out movement, for example, going back to as far as, you know, fans protesting on the pitch and whatnot. So there's clearly still a very vocal part of the West Ham fan base that aren't happy with the board. And I think, like, you know, involvement from other investors around the world could, you know, it's probably a bit optimistic because it's never going to have, but it could bring some optimistic to, you know, bring some harmony to West Ham fans. But we've all got opinions, haven't we? So who knows? What are my thoughts on the recent win last weekend? So for anyone that doesn't know, I was actually there at Old Trafford. Frankly, I would put it in my top 3 West Ham days, like as in like West Ham games that I've been to. That as an away win, 2-0 away at home. I know Man United aren't exactly flying high themselves and they're going through a turbulent period, haven't won in the league for a couple of months. So it's the best possible time to play Man United, don't get me wrong. But I think winning away, the sun was out. You know, I left my house at like 5:30 that morning to get to the game. Sun was out. It was a beautiful day. And yeah, like, it was just a great performance. And building upon that, obviously leading on to the question from Mark, I think myself, like most West Ham fans, found ourselves very unhappy at the lineup. I thought to myself, you know, yeah, for sure, mate. Yeah, special guest appearances on West Ham Fan TV. I was on my West Ham Fan TV. Me and my friend Ben. I don't know if any of you guys are OG kind of like YouTube fans, but one of my best friends in the world is a guy called Ben Glander. Ben Glander used to run a West Ham fan channel. So me and Ben went to the game, left our houses like 5:30 in the morning. He come and pick me up, bless him. I drove all the way there, and obviously Nicky, we both know Nicky really well from West Ham Fan TV, and he just jumped us in the stands. He was like, "What are you thinking?" And it was like, we've driven 5 hours to watch this team potentially play. I didn't know where any goals were going to come from, but we scored two, and thankfully, United weren't really at the races. I think in the second half, obviously Areola put in like a really good performance. Definitely earned his clean sheet, and I think throughout the game, Wan-Bissaka, wow, that man continues to impress me in a West Ham shirt. Obviously, prior to him coming to West Ham, he was always like top of my shopping list in the window. He just always was, especially for the money that was available for. Looking like 15 million, I think it was around that. Like for the amount of money that he is, he's Premier League proven. He was at United for a reason. United were going through a turbulent many years, and he was always like fairly consistent, but always had the criticism of him that he couldn't go forward. And I think on multiple occasions now, for West Ham, in a very poor West Ham side, he's shown what he can do on the ball. And I think even, like it's a big game for him, like, and to be clear, leaving Man United to come to West Ham in many people's eyes would be a step down. And a lot of players would see that as like, their primes maybe gone in their career. Aaron Wan-Bissaka went back to the big club he's just left and put in arguably his best performance in a West Ham shirt. And I think there's many other players on that day that probably put in their best performances. Someone like Guido Rodriguez, for example, I didn't have much hope when I saw him. I saw that midfield and thought, quite frankly, I'll tell you what I think about the lineup. I saw our midfield and I thought, we're going to get run ragged. We have no legs in the midfield. And Guido Rodriguez just dictated that game all day, really. I think Mohamed Kudus had a great game in a West Ham shirt. Good to see. Haven't had enough of them this year. But yeah, there was lots of impressive performances. And I really liked the performances of Kilman and Todibo. I think Kilman, again, we saw him kind of dictate play, drive the ball out from defense and pick the ball out. Todibo had a few charging runs as well. And it's really exciting. I just think like performances like that give me hope for next season and hope for kind of bolstering the squad, because we are going to have a mass exodus from the club this year. Lots of prominent football players from this football club are going to be leaving. People like Soufal and Cresswell, two players who put in great performances on the weekend. Let's not forget that, but they'll be leaving. There's also rumours of Thomas Souček, again, came up clutch, scored a big goal for us on the weekend. He's rumoured to be leaving as well. So it's going to be a big few months, but I think ultimately it was an incredible day. I was so happy to be there. Like I say, to be in Manchester, every time I've ever been to Manchester, it's been cold and raining. So to be there when the sun's shining at Old Trafford, my first time actually at Old Trafford as well, it was just a beautiful day, beautiful day. So cannot complain with that at all. Right, let's get back into the questions, guys. Barry, the man himself, how you doing, mate? Good to have you here. I'm just hoping we get some money for a few decent players in the summer. Let Potter make his mark on the squad. I think that's the hope of most fans at the moment. I mean, things like a performance on the weekend will obviously gives fans hope. Obviously, you can't read too much into it because Man United are woefully poor, and I think they actually made us look good as well. As well as we put in a good performance. Don't get me wrong; it's never easy to go away to Old Trafford. I think they were incredibly poor. They were very woeful. I felt sorry at times for Bruno Fernandes, or Fernandes, however you want to pronounce it, because you can just see how quality he is. Like his passing range, for example. I think in the second half, for example, there was a ball on the half volley that he just clipped straight across the pitch, about 40-50 yards. Player didn't even have to move. It just stuck to his chest. And it was just like, he had so much quality, but he had nothing all day. And he probably wasn't as influential in the game as he would like to have been, because there was no creativity around him. He had, Haaland in front, who obviously had that major chance at the end, and it took a big save from Areola to stop us from conceding. But felt sorry for Bruno in a way where he was just had so much, so much ability, but like nothing around him. So I can see why so many Man United fans are so frustrated with their season. But at the end of the day, would I take a 17th in the league with a final in a European trophy? I probably would. So I know the goalposts have probably moved for them because they've won everything a million times, but I know what I'd trade for sure. Randy, Good comment, right? If he buys the gold shares, he will become the second major shareholder behind Sullivan, who owns 38.8%. As Tripp would then become 33.1% shareholder, ahead of Krasinski, who owns 27%, mate. Yeah, appreciate that, Randy. That is information I was not privy to. I haven't read up enough on that, to be fair. But yeah, I think, as I say, I'm optimistic about ownership in the football club for sure. As I said earlier, I'm not really one to like dig out the board and do things like that. But I think a lot of the fan base are kind of fractured at times. There's so many people that want to ignore performances on the pitch and just talk about the board or the manager and whatnot. So hopefully, if we was to get a more unified board, eventually into an eventual takeover, hopefully it would get West Ham fans more harmonised, because we're always at odds with one another. All right, Barry, I hope we have a big spend up, as we need it, as eyes on the board and Potter with Macaulay in the summer cannot be a failure. I mean, I'm interested in our summer and what it's going to look like. I can see a few big players leaving, depending on the outcome of the Paquetá trial, and you can see him leaving the football club. You can see Mohamed Kudus potentially leaving the football club. You can see obviously all the players that have already been confirmed, but then in terms of like saleable assets, Naya Faged is rumored to be going. So you're looking at 3 players there that could be, you would assume anywhere from like 100 to 150 million pounds total. You'd like to think, Paquetá, how much does he go for? He's had a woeful season, so is Kudus, but you'd like to think they've got some sort of value. Now, I forget, has had a strong season in La Liga, so maybe like 30 to 40 million for each of them. You'd like to hope. Mohamed Kudus probably a little bit more. So I don't know. I think if we get some, if we get rid of those saleable assets in terms of they're actually leaving the football club, of course, you never want to see someone like a Mohamed Kudus leave your football club. But if we can get some money in the door, or in the bank, I should say, for those players, I think it gives us the opportunity to go out there and utilize the new kind of scouting department and recruitment team that obviously that Macaulay is going to be spearheading. So, yeah, I'm excited as well for this year and how it can be, the start of something. Sorry, I've just bloody spiders just jumped on me. Can't believe it. What is going on? Spider just jumped on me, and I'm not a Spider-Man, guys. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm excited to see what Kyle Macaulay can do alongside Graham Potter in terms of getting some names in the door, and you can see lots of far-flung leagues are being scouted already. The Danish league and Belgian league and things like that, and players are being linked from those kind of parts of the world. And I think that's really interesting, because we've seen, in terms of case studies, we've seen players come in the door at Brighton, for example, and become success stories, and the club then look to sell them on and make major profits before delivering well for the football club. So I think West Ham, where they are in the food chain, they're obviously a bigger football club than Brighton, and we can maybe get in some of these quality players, put in some good seasons, and hopefully fire us back up into getting into Europe. So I'm excited. I'm really excited for this summer. I'm interested to see what it can look like. Top man Budgie, make sure you all watch Budgie's show after this as well. Gives it an evening peep. Just setting up for the Osh, and thought I'd drop in and smash the like button. Make sure you all do too. Exactly, yes, 100% like and share the podcast far and wide. The Dad's Our Job podcast. Say good evening, Jamie. Hope all's well. I am very well, guys. Go check them out. They've got a great podcast over there, and great guys as well. Budgie, hope you're well, mate. Do you think us trawling these lesser leagues is a wise move or dangerous? I just kind of spoke about that, actually. I didn't see your comment, but I think it's a good question, Mark. Obviously, you always run the risk of, picking up players that aren't going to quite perform. But I think West Ham, in general, over the last few years, have actually, even prior to, Macaulay and Potter being at the club, and obviously they've done it at previous clubs, don't get me wrong, but I think even West Ham's record of picking up players from lesser leagues over the previous years has served us quite well. Even players like Aaron Cresswell, for example, who's signed for 4 million from Ipswich and is now the second highest Premier League has the second most Premier League appearances for West Ham, behind Mark Noble. And then even in more recent times, we have the Czech boys in Souček and Soufal. You have Jared Bowen, who came obviously from Hull. Somerville came from Leeds, for example. I think, and he's still got room to prove his kind of ability and whatnot. injury didn't help him. But I think West Ham have always done quite well at bringing players from lesser teams, and that's just where we are in the food chain. Getting players in from your Dutch leagues, your Belgian leagues, your Danish leagues, I think they have quite a high translation rate into the Premier League in terms of that being a success. So it's always a risk. You always run the risk, but I think with someone like a Carl McCauley and Graham Potter in charge of that process, I think they've done it quite well at other football clubs. So you'd like to think that we'd be in good hands for them to do it at West Ham. Barry and Randy are having a right good conversation in here. I hope you're well, Randy. All we need is a good few players, and we got Earthy, Potts, Skulls, and maybe Marshall into the first team. I don't know if I can see all of them coming into the first team, but it's definitely, I think, you look at the season that Earthy's had, for example. I think there's definitely going to be a room for him in the squad. I think Skulls is obviously going to be pushing for a starting spot alongside, Emerson and whatnot. So Potts, I think, will have some way to go to get in the squad, but and same with Marshall as well. But again, I think there's definitely 4 players there that can actually have a bright career, and I hope that they can continue to prove it in a West Ham shirt for sure. I think Earthy and Skulls are probably the most likely. Obviously, Skulls is already getting minutes. Patchy, I can see my chat has been popular pre-show again. Top man. Here we go. Right, Barry. Well, we got Somerville back in the summer. Antonio as well. If he can play again, we need a good few players: a striker, midfielder, a centre back, maybe a second keeper. We'll definitely need a second keeper. I think potentially a third keeper. It depends where Fotheringham's going to be in the food chain. If he's happy being the third choice, then yeah. But like, is Areola and Fotheringham as a couple strong enough in the league? Probably not. Areola put in a good performance on the weekend, showed us why he's a World Cup winning keeper, but I think he needs to do that a little bit more often. I think it's been a bit suspect at times this year. So it's good to see him put those performances in. But yeah, I think a second keeper could definitely be needed. Obviously, it looks like Tadibo is going to be brought in. I know he's on loan, but it looks like he's going to be brought in permanently. So I think we need kind of bolstering in the spine of our squad, to be honest. So yeah, I can see us, looking for a striker, a midfielder, and a centre back, and a second keeper for sure. It really depends on the fitness of Nicholas Füllkrug as well. But I would still like us to go out there and get, some competition for him. Obviously, he's really won the hearts of a lot of West Ham fans over the last few weeks, but if we're being realistic, he hasn't played enough this year. He hasn't done enough. So he's passionate, and that's great to see. You want to see someone like that do, good things for the football club, because he does come across as so kind of like down to earth and relatable. But for sure, it's like one of those things where we paid big money for someone of his age. He needs to be delivering on that, So yeah, right. Let's have a look. Budgie, just a quick question, Jamie. Do you see any way we keep Kudus or Paquetá in the summer? To be honest, mate, I mean, the news headlines, you can't take too much notice of them a lot of the time. I think there's a constant flip-flop in between, we only have money if we sell players, or we're going to have money available. I think for us personally, I think Kudus's release clause activates this summer. I think it hasn't been a good season for him. I think Mohamed Kudus is clearly a talent with sky-high potential and can still improve. But I think cashing in on someone like a Mohamed Kudus could be a good thing for the football club, because it could allow us to redistribute that wealth across the squad. You look at what happened when we sold Declan Rice, for example. We brought in, Mavropanos? Obviously not the best example, but we brought in James Ward-Prowse, Edson Alvarez, and Kudus, all in that window with that money, and all have kind of served the club relatively well. So, I mean, if we was to get anywhere northwards of 70 to 80 mil for Mohamed Kudus, for me, I think that's a conversation you need to be entertaining. I think Paquetá on the weekend, I think West Ham showed what they could do without Paquetá in the side. Myself, I've been massively frustrated with Lucas Paquetá this year, and I can't imagine how hard it is for him to play with these charges kind of looming over him and the ongoing kind of court case. So I think depending on the outcome of that, I can see him leaving the football club as well. I can actually see both of them leaving. You know, I think in terms of like saleable assets and like what West Ham could actually do, I think if we were to get rid of both those players, you're looking northwards of £100 million, and I think West Ham could do a lot with that money right now. And I think if we was to hold on to Paquetá for another year or two, I think that asset starts to depreciate quite massively. And I think Kudus is at a point now where it's quite pivotal in his career. You know, he's mid-20s. You know, he had a great first season with us, but this year he's kind of been very underwhelming, and a lot of that has been not necessarily down to him. Obviously, he'll be the first person to probably say, you know, he hasn't performed to the level he knows he's capable of, but you know, systems and changing of managers and whatnot has definitely not helped him. So for me, to answer your question in the most simplest way, there probably is a way where we can keep some of them. But if it's me, I'm probably clearing shop and looking to redistribute that across the squad. I think the Mohamed Kudus replacement was Crescenzio Somerville, and I think he's already at the football club. And depending on if he can keep fit, I think we've got him right there. So that's my opinion on it, to be honest with you. And I think Paquetá, obviously, he's a lovable rogue, isn't he? He can do incredible things on a football club, but he's incredibly frustrating to watch at times as a West Ham fan. You know, some of the things that he does for West Ham, he just wouldn't get away with at top quality side, and maybe that's an insight as to why it may not have worked with him at the top level, because you know he's too prone to giving the ball away. He's got a lax in his game where he does give the ball away in vulnerable areas, and it leads to us turning the ball over. You know, and the opposition getting goal scoring chances just too many times for my liking. You know, I love watching Lucas Paquetá play, and when you look at the heart of football, like what football is, football fans want to be entertained, and he is the archetypal entertainer of football. He's the guy that gets you off your seats when you with a nutmeg or a pass that's ridiculous. And we've seen that at moments this year, but just hasn't been enough, you know. But if he does go, I think it'll be with an asterisk. Or obviously, that this year has probably been underwhelming because of the court case. But I'll always love him for putting that ball through to Jared Bowen in the final. So, in my eyes, we have to get rid of both of them. Watched Sunderland last night, and most of the Sunderland players got outplayed for a large part, for sure. I think Coventry can count themselves really unlucky. I think in both legs, Coventry were guilty of just not finishing their chances. They had more than enough to win those games. Obviously, I think Frank Lampard as well obviously alluded to that in his press conference post game, saying dominated both games really, and Sunderland just had that grit. They had that kind of like backing of the fans, and the full-time scenes were incredible. So it'd be interesting to see Sunderland back in the Premier League. You know, obviously they're going to a final against Sheffield United, who are probably favourites. Probably got a little bit more skin in the game, a little bit more not skin in the game, but a little bit more experience in kind of being there. So seeing Sunderland back in the Premier League from like a neutral is, you know, a great kind of spectacle. You know, some of my best mates, one of my best mates, sorry, is a Newcastle fan, and the idea of seeing Newcastle and Sunderland playing each other back again in the Premier League, it really reminds you of that kind of Barclaysman era. So, yeah, I'd love to see Sunderland do it and go the whole way. At the moment, you would think both will go, although Kudus will say Sky interview says he wanted to see West Ham in Europe, but the expectation is he will go. Paquetá will be on the court case. Here we go. I've never gone in heavily on the board before this season, as I feel like they do spend, but I can never get my head around how Brady has the arrogance to feel she is qualified to pick a football manager. I hear you. Loving the show, Jamie. Appreciate it, Laura. Appreciate it. Damien, hope you're well, mate. But in my opinion, the board have to deliver, mate. They really do. And if they do, then Potter will need to deliver next season. Yeah, I hear you. We always spend money, just not always well. That's true. Damien, that's probably the most simple way to put it, mate. We sell badly, less than 25 mil for Egred isn't really acceptable. Ooh. Are you going to get 25 million for a player in La Liga? Just most sides in that league aren't spending that kind of money on players. I know he's got interest from sides in Germany as well, but I think anything And you think northwards of 10 to 15 mil would be good business for Aged. Clearly didn't work out well for him at West Ham in the latter stages. Obviously was part of that Conference League winning side, so always have a place in my heart. But I think anywhere from 10 to 15 mil would be good business. All right, let's rattle through a few of these comments because we are getting caught up a lot and there's a lot to get through today. Marshall has had a better season than Earthy, probably has, but is a youngster going to be afforded the opportunity to start up front for West Ham? I just can't see that happening right now. But if he gets minutes, I'd love to see it. All right, here we go. Agreed could go to Real Sociedad as they will have 50 mil from Arsenal. So we should try and get half of that for Agreed as well. Lee, I am well, thank you, my friend. How are you? Good to have you in here. That's why Damien, these leagues should be targeted over Prem and Championship, as we'll be charged more from here than abroad. Marshall will be a good player off the bench. He's good on the ball and is quick as lightning. Yeah, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that for sure. I still think Mavropanos represented good value. I'm with you there, Damien, as well. Like, I actually personally quite like Konstantinos. He's a again another one of those players that's like can do something brilliant, but also can decide a game by doing something brilliant or giving the ball away and making a mistake. But if he was to leave the club this summer, I hope he doesn't. To be clear, I think he's a good option. I'd remember him for scoring that goal at Arsenal, for example. So, yeah, I also interviewed him, and he was a lovely guy. So, yeah, Paquetá has always been an asset I'm willing to part with. I can hear you. Seeing Atletico Madrid or after Kudus, well, we're not going to get big money from Atletico Madrid. That's the issue. So, anywhere from like 60 to 70 million, you'd like to see. Somerville is not an adequate replacement for Kudus by any stretch. I don't think you replace Mohamed Kudus. You just try to do your best. And I think Somerville has the potential to be a good Premier League winger. That's not what I mean. I don't think they're like for like players. That's not what I'm saying. But in terms of like, an attacking threat, I think they can both be a threat to sides in different ways. So I think Somerville was probably the replacement for Kudus because of that, because there's always been an understanding that he has a release clause in his contract, and we always knew it would be activating this summer. So Kudus could stay, and ideally we go into next season without having to part ways with him. But I think Somerville was obviously there as a good backup, And we've also got Luis Guilherme as well, who you'd like to see going into the new season will have increased minutes. So because when I've seen him this year, I think I've been impressed. Obviously, he's young player. People forget how young he is. So yeah, having the opportunity to kind of like flourish next year could be important for Luis Guilherme, who's obviously 19 years old, and Somerville obviously being 23, like a year younger than Kudus as well. So who knows that they can both have breakout seasons. Here we go. I sometimes forget about Cree. It's my age, I hear you, mate. I hear you. He's a lot smaller though. He is smaller. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think they're like for like players, guys. And I appreciate that I'm reading comments from 5-6 minutes ago. So there may be a million more down below where I'm catching up. But I think they're similar. They're not necessarily similar players, but they can both be attacking threats as wingers and create problems. And we've seen that from Somerville in spells this year. He's just obviously struggled to keep fit and then got a big injury. So league packed with athletes. Really hope Marshall makes it. I agree with you. Watching Bristol City the other night, hardly passed the ball to Irvie. They kept going down the left. I would love it to sign. This is an interesting one, Barry. I'd love it to sign Joe Bellingham, though. He's a great midfielder and would be worth 20 million for. Plus, Jude goes to his brother's game so he could see him. Yeah, imagine Jude Bellingham coming down to London Stadium. Yeah, I think obviously Joe Bellingham this year got a Championship Young Player of the Year. He's clearly had an impressive season and is looking to. It's looking likely that he'll leave. I've seen some big sides in for him though, so I don't know how realistic West Ham would be, especially when you've got someone like a Borussia Dortmund who could potentially be coming in for you, and you could emulate the steps that your brother took. So I've been an advocate for Joe Bellingham for quite some time. And yeah, like who's to say that if Sunderland don't make it to the Premier League, he ends up staying with Sunderland. So there is always that kind of potential as well. But either way, it'll be an interesting one. I think we'll see. He's played like 40 odd games for Sunderland this year. The fact that he's got Championship Young Player of the Year, lots of big players have got that over the years. Could I see him coming to West Ham? It would be a nice kind of like sentiment, and I think he would add some valuable kind of legs into our midfield. But is it realistic? I'm not sure. Right, let's catch up with some of these comments. Benrahma flopped in the playoff final, but we still signed him. No. Again, will be a 20 to 25 million. People like left-footed centre backs. Well, you'd hope so, mate. Don't forget to press the like button below. Tapping the hearts in the chat. Don't wash. I hear you guys. I hear you. Appreciate it, Budgie. Mark, that is an expectation. That is the expectation. Kudus will go. So let's see where he goes. And for me, when he goes, it has to be Saudi for our benefit. It could be. If he goes Saudi, we could get some big money. A fit Somerville is like a new signing. I hear you there, Matt. That's exactly what I see. Atleti paid over 100 million for Felix. They did indeed. How did that work out for them? Not very well. I'm just saying I can't expect us getting something sky high. There's not a lot of money in La Liga outside of the big three, so to speak. We got the airport not far from our stadium as well. Job would love it in London. We're all sold on the Job Bellingham idea, aren't we? I like Job Bellingham. I prefer Andy Diouf, but I like Job Bellingham. Ashari looks really good. Tolly won Ebony Award, Best African Player. He looks all right. And I'm finally caught up on the chat, guys. Wow, that was a crazy 15 minutes. We've been talking non-stop. If selling Kudus meant getting a top goalkeeper and very decent midfielder, then this enhances the strength. And I agree with you, Daniel. It's like, this is what I alluded to earlier in the show. I think no West Ham fan really wanted to see Declan Rice leave the football club a couple of years ago, but we got him big money for him. You can like northwards of 105, 115 million, was it? The exact fee escapes me, but either way, we got big money. And in that window, after he left, we managed to redistribute that across the squad and entirely rebuild our midfield and get like, a new attacker in Mohamed Kudus, who then went on to have an incredible season. So with your James Ward-Prowses and your Alvarez and your Kudus, and I know we got Mavropanos that window as well. You brought 4 players in, really distributed across that, and have kind of all played pivotal roles across the West Ham side over the last couple of years in different ways. So for me, I think, Mohamed Kudus, you don't want to see him leave. You never want to see someone of that quality leave your football club. But if it's the difference between selling a Mohamed Kudus, a really saleable asset, someone that has genuine quality, has shown it time and time again in a West Ham shirt, just not enough this season, a big side may take a gamble on that. If that's an Atletico Madrid and they want to pay 70, 80 million, we're currently scouting the Danish leagues and the Belgian leagues and all these kind of like far-flung leagues that are, that Carl McCauley and Graham Potter are so accustomed to. Who's to say that we couldn't find the next Mohamed Kudus in one of those leagues and look to sell them on in a few years' time as well, and start that conveyor belt that has become so familiar at Brighton, So you never want to see top players leave, but if the player doesn't want to be there, and if you get big money, we have to understand where we are in the food chain. And I think currently where we are in the league, top players aren't going to want to play for us. Mohamed Kudus is probably good enough to be playing Champions League football. Hasn't shown it enough this year at West Ham, but if he's going to be offered that elsewhere, then you have to understand that he's probably going to accept it. And if that brings a big fee, then I understand, that's where we are, Right, let's have a look. Let's have a look at more comments. What's important, Damien? I want the best we can get. As long as the club go and target the best possible player for us, then I'll be optimistic. Let's see. I think we all have to be optimistic. Toller's jump rank in the Gira squad. Osimhen and Boniface are weary of him. Akad. Here we go. Right. Akadea Damien at Genk, you mean, or Omega from Strasbourg? Hopefully, mate. I think Omega would be a big signing, but I think it costs a lot. Obviously, the one that I would love is Jonathan David, but if it's a competition between Naples and Stratford, I know where I'm probably picking. Don't get me wrong, Naples is a bit it's a bit shaky when you're out there. I went to City a couple of years ago when they won the Scudetto, and it was like crazy mania. If you're a football player there, like, I can understand why you want to live there, but like as a civilian, dangerous city to live in. I like both. Promise David at USG, another good Nigerian. Out of the two, who would you want, Damien? I like both, but I'm edging towards Omega. But what do you reckon? Omega's had a great season for me personally. I know you guys are obviously having your own conversation in the chat. Omega's had a top season. Team of the season worthy this year, and I think obviously he has all the kind of necessary criteria to look and be successful in the Premier League. It's just whether he can actually deliver on that in the Prem. I think if he was to become available, I think there'd be a lot of bigger sides in for him. I know there's obviously been rumours of links to Chelsea already, and if they get Champions League football, it look that is, that is looking likely already. I think there's a chance that he could then potentially go to another London rival and whatnot. But that's that really. Truthfully, Randy, who do I want? I mean, it's a difficult one. It really depends on who's available. For me, I tweeted earlier, I'd throw the kitchen sink and everything that we have to try and get Jonathan David. Jonathan David, I think, is a really out and out number 9, and would be someone that, we crave. West Ham have needed a striker for a very, very long time, and I think Jonathan David is the answer. Again, Napoli is probably more of an attractive prospect because, one, you're living in Naples first and foremost, but also secondly, they're about to win the Scudetto. They'll have Champions League football. They play a high caliber of football. They probably have better players than this at the moment. So I can understand it if his eyes were turned elsewhere. But like, if it's me, I'm throwing the kitchen sink, the cupboards, the fridge, the kettle, the toaster, everything at him to try and get him playing football at West Ham this year. Later this year, I should say. We've needed a proper number 9 for years. We haven't had a striker that's been someone who scores out, bags of goals, or an out and out kind of striker to fit an assist system in a long, long time. And I would just love anyone. I would just love Jonathan David in that regard. I also think there's other players who are obviously going to fit the bill. People like Delap at Ipswich, who will probably go to a bigger team than us. So yeah, like there are a couple of names. I don't know how realistic it would be. Imagine Osimhen release, only 16 mil. He's just never coming to us. Victor Osimhen would be incredible, by the way, and it would bring us. I tell you why it would be good. It would be good commercially for the club as well, because we'd get 1 million new fans from Nigeria. So yeah, Osimhen wouldn't choose us, Trudge, sadly. I agree. Anyway, guys, I've been talking at you for 40 minutes. Let's start wrapping this up. The last weekend was class. I think for me, that I was fortunate enough to be there at Old Trafford. It's probably top 3 games that I've been to as a West Ham fan in my life. It was just amazing to go to Old Trafford and win 2-0, especially when the sun was out. It was just class. The best possible Sunday I could have asked for. So yeah, second would be Sevilla at home. First would obviously be the final in Prague. So they're my top 3. Comfortably goes in there, because you always want to see Man United lose. But what a mid-off we have next week anyway. We never want to see Tottenham winning anything. So we were singing all game, if you beat them, you're our mates, So let's hope they bloody do, because I don't know if I'll be able to come on here next Wednesday if Tottenham are winning during the show. It'll be a nightmare. But anyway, guys, it has been a pleasure talking to you as always. And I've been off for a couple of weeks because of the Champions League coverage has been on. But I will be back, not next week, the week after. And I'll catch you all then. It's been a pleasure. Love to you all. Catch you later.